The trend of PlayStation doing remasters and remakes is continuing, with the recent confirmation that a Horizon Zero Dawn Remaster is coming thanks to an ESRB rating. And in the wake of this discovery, industry insiders started to indicate that there would be another remaster announced soon, and it didn't take long for rumors to surface that it would be Days Gone, the open-world action-adventure game from 2019. Now, obviously, this is prompting both criticism as well as questions. The biggest question, of course, being why remaster these games in particular. They're not that old, and it always leads to a list of games that are quite a bit older that people think would make for better remasters or remakes. Why not Killzone or Resistance or SOCOM? And the big one, of course, being, where is the Bloodborne remaster? Where is the Bloodborne remake? Now, many, I think, are good to question this, saying, listen, why are you not doing different games? Why are you not going back further? Some have gone beyond that, though, and have gotten critical, claiming that all PlayStation does is remasters and remakes. They go even further sometimes to say that we haven't got enough new games this gen for you to be even doing remasters or remakes. Some have also expressed concern. The PlayStation 5 Pro announcement didn't really show any new games, and we are learning that PlayStation's presence at Tokyo Game Show is largely going to be comprised of third-party games. After last year's PlayStation Showcase and the absence of one this year, some fans of the platform are growing restless. Where are the first-party studio games? And while waiting for those first-party studio games to make announcements, your PS5 Pro is announced with existing games, and we hear about 2 more remasters. So the hardcore PlayStation fans are feeling a little bit ignored. Now, I do understand some of the reaction to this. A lot of this does, though, seem rooted in emotion or exaggeration, rather than based on the reality of just how consistent the delivery of games has been for the PS5 the last 4 years. I also think there is an entire strategy in play that nobody is considering. Now, every weekday here on Reforge Gaming, I tell you what I think about a gaming topic, and then we go to a live stream where I want to hear what you think. So if you like this content, hit like and subscribe. First, let's consider all the games that fans asked to be remade and discuss the likelihood of that ever happening. Now, some of these games I think eventually could show up in some capacity, while others will likely remain in the past. And without question, Bloodborne is the first game to always come up in these discussions about remasters and remakes on PlayStation. And for good reason. It is considered one of the fan favorites from the FromSoft games within the company's history, but it's never been given a 60 FPS update on console or graced the PC platform in an official way. Then there have been countless rumors, leaks, and insiders claiming that Bloodborne is getting a remake or a remaster, and it's almost here. We've heard this multiple times. This has actually led to me theorizing about why we have heard so many different rumors and leaks about Bloodborne in particular. At some point, I do think a Bloodborne remaster was either greenlit or it was actively being worked on. This is why some insiders and those with connections have reported that a Bloodborne remaster was coming. Somewhere along the line, I believe they decided to do a full-blown remake, that was a better route. If you look at the quality and the praise of the Demon's Souls remake, it may have played a role in the discussion. There's also the information that we consistently hear that the game itself was built around 30 FPS, and you can't just raise the cap, you'd have to remake the entire game. Now, this is why I think we've heard from other sources that there is a Bloodborne remake coming. Too many people with reliable sources have claimed that this thing is coming in some capacity for it to never happen. But there is a huge difference between remaking a game from almost 10 years ago and just doing a remaster, especially when even the mods that enable you to play the game at 60 FPS can actually cause issues. As I already stated, the original game was designed around 30 FPS. That can mess with the animations of both the player as well as the enemies. But now I want to consider the other 2 categories of games that come up. First, we have the nostalgic category, and second, we have the shooter category. So I want to consider the nostalgic category first. Whenever the discussion of PlayStation remakes comes up, you will consistently find a few games getting named in the mix. And 3 games that I commonly see thrown around are Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, and Ape Escape. Now, when it comes to these games, I get it. A longtime PlayStation fan is going to have fond memories of these games, but I put them in the nostalgia category because that's honestly all they really are at this point. They are nostalgic touch points for the most longtime PlayStation fans, but for everyone else, they're just old games that we vaguely recognize. I started playing on PlayStation with the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 4 Pro era, and I mainly got the Pro for Spider-Man and God of War 2018. There is a large percentage of consumers in the PlayStation user base in a similar situation to me. They started building their library well after games like Jak and Daxter had run their course. For a point of reference, the last new Jak and Daxter released in 2009, and then there was a collection that was released in 2012. That's 12 years ago. Games like this are basically beyond the horizon. They are so far back that efforts to remaster or remake them would largely be met with low demand. PlayStation has also very seemingly signaled that they are more interested in making these games available through backwards compatibility, which I think likely gives them all the data they need to decide whether or not they should pursue remakes of the oldest and most nostalgic titles in their catalog. They can see who's playing them, they can see who's downloading and playing the backwards compatible versions, and I'm willing to bet that the data agrees with me, that there's just not enough demand for these older and more nostalgic titles. But what about the shooters that also typically come up in these discussions? Without fail, whenever PlayStation fans look into the back catalog of games in Sony's history, they land on 3 titles: Killzone, Resistance, and SOCOM. And whenever these games get mentioned, I typically point to the overwhelming popularity of Call of Duty on PlayStation as a platform, and that being one of the main reasons you will never really see these games get remakes or remasters, or maybe not even new installments, which many rightly push back on me saying this, and they're like, listen, these are very different games than Call of Duty, and they are, and that's ultimately not the point that I'm trying to make. It isn't that Killzone or Resistance or SOCOM are too much like Call of Duty. It's that the Call of Duty fan base would make up a huge percentage of the target audience for games like this. This doesn't mean that they couldn't be good. It doesn't mean that they couldn't be successful, but it does mean that PlayStation likely does not see it as a worthy investment. A lot of the information and the data points about Call of Duty players within the PlayStation ecosystem, it shows that it's very difficult to get them to play much of anything else. And all 3 of these games hail from a very similar era. Coincidentally, they all had their last installments land in the same year, 2011. With an entire 13-year span since any of them have had a new game, I just don't see the market demand for any of them. And I'm open to being wrong. I do think out of the bunch, a brand new SOCOM would stand the best chance given it's not first person, and it could land in a good competitive lane. So, now that we've answered the question of why not these older games, like everybody says, why won't you do these older games? Let's consider the bigger question of why do remasters and remakes at all? The biggest blind spot for longtime PlayStation fans in discussions about remakes and remasters is that they aren't the only consumers in the PS5 ecosystem. Earlier this year, Sony revealed during an earnings call that roughly 30% of PS5 owners did not own a PS4. If that trend continued throughout this year, that's almost 20 million people who bought a PlayStation 5 and they did not come from the PS4. This could be somebody completely new to the PlayStation platform, or maybe somebody who just skipped the PS4 gen entirely. I almost consider myself one of those people because when I bought a PS4 Pro, it wasn't really to build a library. It was to play 2 games, God of War 2018 and Spider-Man, and I bought virtually nothing else at that time other than maybe Horizon Zero Dawn. Something to increase the speed with which I could grow my library was games on the PS5 like Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, the Demon's Souls remake, The Last of Us Part 1 remake, The Last of Us Part 2 remaster. That made it very easy for me to speed up the rate at which I built a library on my PlayStation 5. If those games didn't exist, I would have less games on my PlayStation right now. Then consider all of the people in that close to 20 million number that didn't even have a PlayStation 4. They could get God of War 2018 and it has a free 4K checkerboard update and it runs at 60 FPS. Then, if you add in Horizon Zero Dawn Remaster or this alleged Days Gone remaster, that's 7 total games that I just listed that those people could add to their library when they jump into the PlayStation 5 for the first time. This is part of the strategy that I don't think everybody is considering. You can't just focus on the existing and long-standing PlayStation users. You have to think about all of the new customers as well. With just 4 years into the gen of the PS5, giving brand new customers 7 other next-gen level games within the PlayStation library, that's a great way to fast-track platform loyalty. And we also have to consider the PlayStation 5 Pro in this equation. When the first leaks about the PS5 Pro landed, one of the most important parts was about how the PSSR technology wanted to hit 4K 60 and 8K 30. But that wasn't the important part. The important part was that they wanted the technology to hit even higher thresholds in the future, namely 4K 120 and 8K 60, which may sound crazy, but it's obvious that they plan to utilize the PSSR technology on the PlayStation 6 when it eventually releases in roughly 4 to 5 years from now. I have consistently described this as building cartilage between the generations. Once developers learn how to leverage the upscaling technology in PSSR, it will mean that any PlayStation 5 game that uses it will automatically benefit from the new strengths of the PS6. Now, if you consider the long tail plans of this PSSR technology in future PlayStation consoles and the current ceiling on graphical fidelity, it all starts to make sense. You can only push lighting and photorealism so far, and we are so close to what I consider to be the ceiling of graphical fidelity that it's not worth pushing past it, and I think that is playing a role in the current plans from PlayStation. In other words, the current level of graphical fidelity in Horizon Forbidden West, especially in Burning Shores, I don't think that's going to be significantly surpassed in the second half of the PS5's life cycle. So, taking your biggest games in your PlayStation first-party studio catalog and raising them all to roughly the same thresholds, that's a really smart plan, in my opinion. It means that by the end of the PS5's life cycle, every major IP in the first-party studio lineup will be as close to the graphical ceiling as possible. It also means that if the PSSR tech is utilized in the PlayStation 6, all of these titles will look and perform even better on that console as well. This puts a whole new meaning on the concept of backwards compatibility. It's one thing to go back and play old games for a trip down memory lane. It's completely different for them to have graphical and performance transcendence from one generation to the next. So basically, all of this has led me to 2 big conclusions. First and foremost, it is clear that remasters and remakes are very likely not for you if you're irritated by their very existence. They are actually for every new customer that the PlayStation ecosystem has earned, especially all those PlayStation customers who didn't even come from a PS4. Anything that can increase their library and their sense of catalog quality is both good for those consumers and good for the PlayStation platform. Think of it this way. Plenty of games release every year that are not for you, and that's actually good for the industry. It means that there is a whole mix of consumers out there enjoying a wide variety of games. The more diverse the consumer base, the stronger that it is. There's always huge sports games, racing games, fighting games. They come out every year, and they are not for me. I don't buy them, and I don't play them, and that's okay. I think that's a sign of strength in the industry. The second conclusion I came to about this is PlayStation sees the graphical floor of their biggest titles as something that is worthy of raising, and that helps build a better bridge between the generations of console, and it also helps the developers focus more on features and innovation rather than just pushing graphics and performance, and I think we all benefit from that. So, why more remasters? Why more remakes? Because you're not the only consumer in the ecosystem, and the future is stronger with bigger libraries and more forward-thinking forms of compatibility, and I think that's better for all of this. But that is just my thoughts on the matter. What are your thoughts on the matter? And I want to hear from you. You can leave a comment below, but you can also come to the live stream. It'll hit a card here. It'll be in a pinned comment below, and we follow our uploads with those live shows. So if you like this kind of content and you want more like it, please remember to like, share, and subscribe.